Welcome to the second episode of Wanderings and Wool Gathering. I'm your host, Foggy. With me, as always, T-Bags.
What up?
JPP.
Hey, y'all. How you doing today?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. We got a pretty cool show tonight. We're going to be talking about Eminem's surprising album last week, Machine Gun Kelly's response. Tony has an awesome challenge for us later tonight. But we're going to pick up where we left off last time with my challenge, which was to pull a singer from a band and plug them into a different band and get a completely different experience. So we're going to begin tonight with Tony answering the challenge. What do you have?
Well, I've been super excited to answer this challenge. At first I thought, man, this is so hard, and it really is hard. Paul, did you think it was tough too?
I did. I did.
Okay, so, but, after I started to start plugging some things in, I was like, well, this could be fun. So anyway, here was my line of thinking. This is how I went. Rarely does it ever work really where after a band is famous, they can replace their singer, right? So we have Alice in Chains and STP and Van Halen, bands like that. Not that they didn't do a good job, but has it ever been made better by replacing someone? In my opinion, no. And that's no offense to the people there, but once you get famous, there's just something about that lead singer that helps define the band, and it's really, really hard to replace because you're not just replacing the voice, but a persona and stuff like that as well. So anyway, that's what made it really tough for me. I do think that bands can reform. I mean, look how Pearl Jam came about, and you can put new singers with other people, or you can have side projects like Temple of the Dog and things like that work, but the challenge was to put somebody in a band that to be made better, right? That would either improve that band or would make something interesting.
Yeah, give you just a completely different experience that would ultimately be really cool.
Okay, so that's what I went with. So the only time that I think that this could work is if there's a movement behind it that's equal to or greater than the music itself. So with that, I was thinking we've been on this nostalgic tip. So Rage Against the Machine, when they came out, it was there wasn't really a place for them. There wasn't really a genre for them. And then Tom Morello was doing some crazy stuff with the guitar. And I just felt like that was cool on a music front, but at the same time, they were saying something. I mean, Rage Against the Machine meant that they were raging against the machine. I mean, listen to their albums. And so there was a movement behind it. And then, Audio Slave came about and Street Sweeper Social Club and things like that, which were cool. And Zach De La Rocha kind of fell off the earth. But so I'm thinking if they were to come back again, that would be a band I would bring back. If they were to come back again, who in this day and age could actually front that and be interesting? So are you ready for it?
I'm so ready.
Go for it.
Steve nodded off. Childish Gambino. I feel
interesting.
Yes. I feel like if you look at Donald Glover's body of work from, being able to put a show like Atlanta on TV that's not like any other show on TV to, being a writer behind the scenes to doing his own thing and then, his persona of Childish Gambino, go back and listen to Bonfire, Backpackers, and of course This Is America. And the dude knows how to say something in a different way, So I think if you put Childish Gambino in a room with Tom Morello, you could get an iteration of Rage Against the Machine that would be awesome. So that is my answer.
Sold.
Okay, let's make it happen.
That is right. Not any choice that I would have thought I was going to hear tonight, which is pretty cool. Paul, did you have a chance to think about it much?
I did. Pardon me 1 second. Uh-huh. There we go. Got to get that out. So this is something I kind of stewed on for almost 20 years now. With the new metal movement in the 90s, there was some innovative sounds that were coming out with Korn and Limp Bizkit and things like that. And after a while, you heard album 2 and album 3 from these guys, and they kind of started to sound pretty much in the same cycle. There was a stagnant feel in the grand scheme of things. I mean, there's some good hooks and good tunes here and there, but I always thought it would be interesting if we switched the singers for both bands. So if Jonathan Davis worked with Wes Borland and Limp Bizkit, and then Fred Durst was doing the thing with Korn, because a lot of their sounds that they had on the guitars kind of lent to that hip hop feel. And then, with Fred Durst, just real meaty, Wes Borland's real meaty guitar parts, I thought Jonathan Davis would complement that really in a nice way too.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Well, thanks.
Yeah,
But and I was trying to think of other ones too that would be possible, and I was trying to think, how could I put Bjork in something that she hasn't done before, but she touches on everything, so she kind of wins by default.
Yes,
Bjork with Korn.
That sounds like a side dish, or something. It sounds like a meal number 2.
Right.
Bjork with corn. No, but that would be interesting. I wasn't a huge Fred Durst fan, to be honest with you. I'd like to see what he did in that kind of venue, I guess. But Jonathan Davis switching over would be a very interesting thing for me.
Absolutely. And, I haven't really heard him collaborate much in the past, but I think it would be, pretty cool to check out. And to kind of supplement your note about Zach De La Rocha kind of falling off the radar, he did have an album out, I want to say about 6 years ago, called One Day as a Lion. It's basically distorted synth, drums, and him on vocals. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but highly suggest checking it out. It's pretty interesting.
I will have to check it out. And another side note to that side note is he and Reznor recorded together, and it never saw the light of day. And Reznor said that it was kind of fairly mediocre. I think that Zach wasn't really bringing it, so he didn't want to attach his name to that. But that's what I heard from an interview. We don't know if that's true, but
sure.
I do know that they recorded together, and I would have loved to have seen that come out. But
definitely,
anyway, Stevie D, what is your own answer to your own challenge?
All right. Well, I went all over the place trying to find a singer, but there's no denying my love for Rush. But I think the turnoff for most people with Rush is Geddy Lee's voice. I think there's no denying the amazing drums, the amazing bass. Alex Lifeson's great on guitar. I mean, musically, they're fantastic. But I think that high, screechy voice sometimes is just a turnoff for a lot of people. So to replace him, I think we got something pretty cool. So I really couldn't think of somebody that would be just a slam dunk. But recently I've listened to a lot of covers by Corey Taylor, and he could probably pretty much do about anything. And I was trying to find a place to put Connor Mason in with some group, because that dude's got the best voice I think I've ever heard. But that would be my answer, I think. That would bring people to Rush, damn it.
I could get behind Corey Taylor and Rush, for sure. Paul?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and let's not forget the fact that the Rush pulls all that music off with 3 people. Yes. They had synths going on with their feet and that kind of stuff. So there's certainly some impeccable performance there across the board. But I mean, with any band like that where you have a trio, you add another person to the mix, is it going to really accentuate it, or is that person's dynamic going to completely kill it too, from a personnel standpoint? So that's another piece of that puzzle that it could turn into a whole other episode in itself.
True.
Yeah, it's funny. Before we get on to Eminem, you brought up Jonathan Davis working with other people or whatever, and then recently I saw, like I just said, I was watching Corey Taylor do stuff, and he and Jonathan Davis did Sabotage. He joined Korn on stage, and that got me thinking about the Beastie Boys. At some point, I would love to see a Beastie Boy album where on each song they have a different person stand in to be the third Beastie Boy. I think that would be amazing. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I think that could be such a cool tribute if they would do something like that.
It would be cool. I mean, I think they could do about anything. Beastie Boys are on their own level.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Nirvana did that tribute show, and they had all sorts of artists come out and perform, like St. Vincent and, what's her name, Lorde. She came out and did a tune as well.
All right, fellas. Are we ready? We ready to weigh in?
Well, I think the whole music world right now is speaking about Eminem. Maybe not the whole music world, but Eminem, dropped, I think it was like August 31st, dropped Kamikaze out of the blue. No one even knew it was coming out. And it's, I don't know if you guys saw, but today it was official that it was number 1, his 9th number 1 album. Yeah. So, and I think, I don't know, there's division among the articles that I read between whether this was a great thing that he did or this was the worst thing ever. But I personally loved it. I think it was a nice return of Eminem. I think I like diss tracks. I don't like how they end when it gets to be like East Coast, West Coast, and Biggie, Tupac, people dying. But I think it's good for the game because a lot of them, kind of came up doing battle rap, and so seeing Machine Gun Kelly respond, these are all just broad overviews of what it's about. But the album, I think, is solid through and through. And Steve, I know we talked, but I haven't even gotten your take on this. You had some things to say about it?
Well, I've got some things in general I'd like to talk about when we get wrapping up the end of it. But I was curious what Paul's take was, if you'd heard the Machine Gun response.
I did. I watched it on Instagram, and not to show my age, I was kind of naive and was like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
Yeah.
So I watched it, and at first I thought it was just somebody randomly, doing their own reaction thing. But oh, I see. This is where the battle is. But in the grand scheme of things, I may be a few degrees separated, having not really completely ingested Eminem's repertoire through the years, let alone, people he's got beef against. But, I think it's interesting because it's the fact that, they're still keeping a dialogue. Of course, it's in the public eye, much like politics, which we will not get into. But, it definitely shows that there's some energy nonetheless. And I think that's what really music lacks today is a complete sense of energy, be it anger, heated, things of that sort. A lot of our music that we loved through the years was certainly energetic and provided us that momentum and inspiration and drive. But I think as they got older and I'd hate to say the word comfortable, but certainly, in their process, some of that energy dissipates a little bit. You know what I mean? Still writes great songs, but, it certainly just kind of gets phoned in a little more. But, it's nice to see some build up again, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out for him. I got to hear a couple of tracks. I heard the title track, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the album cover. Nice little nod there. I thought that was incredible in the grand scheme of things. That's what certainly piqued my interest at first. I'm like, ooh, what's this? But I need to dig in deeper and give it a more thorough listen. But I thought, all right, there's some good grooves. I can see, kind of where he's getting at, but I need to dig into his history to be able to know what's going on more, essentially. Not to be the naive old codger, but it's kind of where I'm at.
No, I think that's fair. And I mean, I think any Eminem album as of late, you really have to listen to it a few times anyway, just because he's so good at his craft now that there's no way to catch what he said
Right.
on the first 4 passes, So, he's a lyrical genius. I will say I think Machine Gun Kelly was the strongest comeback I've ever seen in one of these things. I think it was strong, especially not having a whole lot of time to put it all together. Although there is, some talk that he's had this kind of in his back pocket if M ever came at him. So, but either way, it is good. And I agree with you. I think the energy that it generates and people are paying attention to things. And, let's face it, both artists are getting, sales out of this whole thing. So
Right.
it's kind of win-win. And I like it. It came out of the blue. So,
Right.
Stevie, that's up to you. Let's see what you got to say.
All righty. Well, first of all, I loved it. I've listened to it over and over. And like you said, Tony, he's so good at his craft. His wordplay is so amazing. The speed and articulate. I mean, everything he does is just amazing. Where I get annoyed is reading online or listening to people talk about how he sucks now and, he's no longer, relevant or whatever. I get annoyed because I like to follow people and watch the progression through time and the changes that they make. It would be so disingenuous for him to make an angry album about his dad right now. He did that 20 years ago. Or about Debbie and Kim. So he got that out of his system. I don't want him to continue rapping about his mom unless there is an actual desire or some real emotion that's linked to that. But he gets through that tough period, and then he makes an album where he writes a song like Legacy, which puts it all in perspective and how he's come out this other side. He writes Headlights, an apology to his mom. You know, I mean, it's like he's done all those things. And he's come out the other side. And now he's doing different things. Doesn't make him bad. It just means he's evolved as an artist. And I like to follow the evolution. I get tired of people saying that people are sellouts or that they suck now because they don't do what they did before. Why do you want to do the same thing over and over? Why do you want to bring up that nasty past that obviously was horribly painful for him? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I do.
You may not have liked the
Paul,
politics in the last album, and he even kind of did an apology about that as well to the people that the Trump supporters that he offended. He kind of backtracked on that a little bit in one of his songs here. I get that particular problem if you don't want to hear politics in your music because your music is escapism. I understand that, but just to come out and say he sucks, or the other one that really drives me crazy is he's no good since he got sober. Do we really want a person to be a drug addict so that we can enjoy him? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's me getting older and moving on past that.
No, I think those are fair points because, well, one, the funny thing is this reaction. I mean, it's all people are focused on Machine Gun Kelly because there was a mention and it came back, and Machine Gun Kelly came back at him. But I'd say the overarching theme is him responding to all of those people saying that he sucks and he's irrelevant, and he's saying that he's still top of the game. You know, he's still king, and I think he is. I mean, even as good as Machine Gun Kelly's reaction was to it, Eminem can switch characters, voices, styles, flow, speeds, everything. I mean, I would just not want to even be anywhere near Eminem if it was a challenge to even just write something, let alone say it. But I do think that there's and I went through this with 9 Inch Nails. Paul, you probably did too. He came back out of rehab, and Trent sober from With Teeth On is different. But what do you want? You want this guy just to stay angry and addicted to drugs so that you get music you like? I mean, I feel that's unfair. If you like the artist, I mean, you want him to stick around and evolve.
Yeah, it's no fair to try to dictate somebody's own personal journey in life by any means. And when we listen to music, we feel like there's a part of ownership. We invest in the CD and we invest in that characteristic of that release. And in fact, when Metallica did the Black Album and they did Load, after the fact, there was a couple of interviews and Jason Newsted was talking about how when they made some changes, people were like, well, that's my Metallica. This is my impression of them. And, the disappointment they got from that complete, directional change. But at the same time, look, it's these guys, artists have to evolve in order to keep going, because if you do the same thing over and over again, it's going to definitely burn you out. And so you have to keep the interest going in some way, shape, or form.
Yep. I mean, that's all the way back to your challenge answer. I mean, you said, Korn and Limp Bizkit. We're starting to do the same thing a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's not hating on them, but it's just there was no evolution there as a band, right, let alone the person. So,
yeah.
But Eminem, I mean, going back to that, Steve, and I know you can appreciate this because we talk a lot about writing. How can someone continually put out this many songs and have that much control over how to rhyme and where syllables hit and make it all make sense too? Like, it's good on top of it all.
Yeah, the way he lands on his rhymes, lands on the beats are just, it's just natural. I mean, I don't think you can teach anybody that. But I remember watching something on YouTube one time, and he had this box of notebooks where he just had written words and plays on words and combinations of words. So this is another thing, I mean, it's natural that he has the ability, but he works hard at it. If he's filled notebooks with potential word phrasings, I mean, that's somebody who is into his craft and has really done it. So you can't take that away from him.
No, and I gotta, sorry if Paul, if you're jumping in, I gotta say something else too.
No problem.
In one of these, in the Machine Gun Kelly song, he says something about I got all of this without being produced by Dre. And whereas okay, I guess that's kind of supposed to be a diss, but at the same time, Eminem, a white boy from Detroit, got noticed by Dr. Dre. Not only noticed, but Dr. Dre pinned his career on him too. I mean, he really took him under his wing, and they made something together that changed, where the rap game was going at the time. And so I don't know how you say that's a bad thing. I did it all without Dre. Well, if Dre calls you Machine Gun Kelly, are you gonna let him produce a track for you? Are you gonna get signed by Dre?
No,
Yeah.
he has
So
principles.
that's right. So yeah, but I'm very interested to see what comes out of that. So I do like that energy. But at the same time, if you go and listen to the full album, I think it's solid. Like if we gave ratings last week, if I had to do this, and out of 5 stars, I think it's a solid 4.5.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you? Yeah,
Absolutely.
Paul. We'll come back to you on that, I guess, right?
Well, and I would say from just the musical impression and again the energy I got from it, I'm going to give it a solid 4 for just catching my ear and retaining my attention. I definitely plan on putting it on in the background and listening to it, and when I do have a free moment, kind of digging in deeper and really listening to it with the analysis mind kind of at play.
And just remember that
I think
he stuck apricot jelly in there, and it worked.
Somehow. Yeah. So if that doesn't make you king, I don't know what does. But I think this is a good time too, also to say we're all sitting here talking to each other, but we're hoping that some people listen and educate us. I mean, if you have comments on this, or what do you think about it? I'd love to see people comment wherever we post this and let us know. I mean, this is all about a discussion between us three and whoever else that's listening.
Yeah, and then Tony, you said you had heard potentially another track coming back from Eminem.
Yeah, there was a source. I mean, it is the internet, so who knows? But somebody said that from Shady Records there has been some talk that there is a reaction track in the works, and I believe it. I don't think M's going to let this one sit as it was, and also he is busy. I mean, I think he's doing something in Detroit tomorrow for the NFL for the Lions game. So, just because he's not responding 2 days later to Machine Gun Kelly, he may have other obligations. So, but I do think something's coming, and I'm interested to see what comes out of it. Even if he doesn't do anything, I think that's interesting. And it, honestly, it did kind of turn me on to Machine Gun Kelly's music. I listened to more in the last week than I had prior to that. So, it's win-win for the artists.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. I had a friend that actually went to the show in Chicago last night, and she posted on Snapchat from her seat. And, she's one of those people that I would not have thought in a million years she would have went to see him perform. But, she was there for where I think Fall Out Boy was there. Mm-hmm. So she just posted a snapshot of the stage with his logo, and all it said underneath it was, "Man, he needs to wash his mouth out with soap."
That's good. I like
awesome. Well, I think that'll wrap up Eminem for the show for now.
Yeah.
We had promised we were going to talk about Aphex Twin this week, but seeing as how the album will be coming out in 6 days, I think we'll hit that on the next show. So before we talk about music we're listening to this week, Tony, let's issue the challenge.
Yes. Okay, so here's the new challenge. It's a two-parter, but it's not terribly tough. I would like to know what your... Well, let me back up. 9 Inch Nails is constantly going to be a theme with me, as you guys know.
I've heard.
So, so it's like 6 degrees of Trent Reznor for me, not Kevin Bacon. But, so... Everybody always says, like, oh, I love that song by Johnny Cash, Hurt.
I had to correct somebody the other day.
And I love... Yeah. And I mean, I love that. And even Trent said, like, I guess that song's not mine anymore. Like, he loved it too. And Mark Romanek directed the video. And everything was perfectly timed at that point in life. But that is a Trent Reznor song. And if you were at any concert watching them close with Hurt, you would know that's a Trent Reznor song that Johnny Cash covered. So, anyway, I'm going into cover songs because I love them, actually. I love to see what people do with them. So I would say here's the challenge. Tell me what your favorite cover song is that already exists, and then pick a song you'd like to see covered and tell me what band you would have cover and why.
That
Cool.
challenge accepted.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've been listening to a lot of covers lately, so yeah, that'll be awesome. Tony, I just had an idea.
Yeah, I hope so.
It's not a challenge, really. But I think if they ever get a listenership, they should have a drinking game. And every time you mention Trent or 9 Inch Nails or I mention Rush, they have to take a shot. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think that our listeners would be passed out by the end of the show, but yeah, we could try it. Paul, what do you say a lot?
Let me just say, if they do that, we'll certainly look better by the end of the episode. But I say a lot, so they're doomed if that's the case. I think I've mentioned Metallica a couple times now, so we'll see what what
Wait till
unfolds.
when we talk about gear,
Paul,
yeah, Paul will be like, so if Paul starts mentioning anything technical, like we're talking about Rush, and he's like, yeah, but they play with their feet, so. I think anytime Paul has like a little side note that has to do with the technical.
Anytime Paul mentions a keyboard,
you drink.
yeah.
The folks at home can't
It's
see
gonna be
it,
more
but
of a
Paul's
complex-
sitting in a studio with a couple of keyboards right behind him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
think
they're
Paul
powered
would-
down.
Yeah.
But I was going to say it's going to be probably more of a complex drinking game if I talk gear, because it's like, well, if he mentions this aspect of it, then you have to have this row of mixed drinks. Otherwise, if he goes down this path, just take a shot.
Yeah, let's keep it simple for the viewers. Right. So, well, I'm glad you guys accepted the challenge. Can I say one thing real quick about Aphex Twin, since we're not reviewing it? But I would say people should watch the video for T69 or T69, whatever, because it's crazy. I love it.
It is cool.
But also, I did write out a review, so I'm not going to go over it. But the one line that stands out to me, because I did want to say this, it was the only way that I could actually say it, was the single feels like a bunch of tweaked out people in a room with rubber bands and video games, and it works. So that's my one liner of review for that.
Yeah, and if you get a chance to watch it out there, listener world, check out the video production, I guess, person, I would say crew, but it's called Weirdcore. I went down a rabbit hole of videos from Weirdcore, and the guy's a genius. He does a lot of really weird engineering, and even integrates footage from the crowd with certain technology that puts Richard D. James's face on people in the audience, and people just go nuts over it. So very cool to see how he plays along with Aphex Twin as a team member in the grand scheme of things.
Right. Yeah. And with that, you can take a shot.
Damn.
Everybody take a drink. Yeah.
So Rush,
No,
they
true.
did this song one time with I don't know if I brought this up last time or not, but you guys are probably familiar with Girl Talk, right?
Oh,
the
yeah.
album All Day.
Yep.
I was just going back through listening to some older Aphex just to kind of get in the mood, and Window Liquor came on. I cannot listen to it now without expecting, Girl Talk to pop in there and the song to change, and it's just crazy. It ruins songs for you in the long run. So be careful if you pick up Girl Talk.
Definitely. My wife's completely terrified of the Rubber Johnny music video, which I don't blame her, from Aphex Twin. That's certainly a very abstract piece, not for the faint of heart.
Nice. So this is typically the part of the show where we share with our listeners some music we're listening to this week. So, Paul, what's been on the playlist?
I've kind of gone back to some music from a few years ago. Tony, I think, has mutual interest in this artist, Apparat, and he has a side project with Mode Selector called Mode Rat or Moderat, however you want to pronounce it. And A New Error is a great album from them. The opening track is just a nice pulsing bass in triplet form, and just a good groove across the board. I stumbled upon some live videos watching them perform for the first two albums, and they've got some new stuff out. So last night I had a little bit of insomnia, so I was actually up listening to some EPs and some other releases I haven't caught up on yet. So that's been in my ears all weekend.
That's great. Yeah, and the last time you were here, you told me about that Mod Rat, and I checked it out. Very good stuff. And I love Apparat, so.
Sweet.
Nice.
All right, Teabags, what you been listening to?
Okay. I tend to write like, actual writing, not music, but so I'll have playlists based on moods because I need to get in the headspace. And so I had to be sad, which is a really weird thing to do, is make yourself sad with music. But there's a song called Funeral by Phoebe Bridges, and it's crazy sad, as you can tell by the title. But anyway, there's a few lines in there because I'm a lyricist person that I wanted to say because I love this. It says, "I have a friend I call when I've bored myself to tears, and we talk until we think we might just kill ourselves, but then we laugh until it disappears. And I thought that was very cool. So anyway, that's one of them. And then last week, you guys made me give like a slightly underwhelming review of Nine Inch Nails, which kind of hurt my soul. So, so I bounced back and started listening to a lot of Nine Inch Nails again this weekend. But some deep cuts because I wanted to kind of balance that whole sadness thing out with something different feeling. So, 3 have been on my playlist all week. 10 Miles High, which is like off the Fragile vinyl, and one of the singles. It was good. Burning Bright, Feel on Fire, which is one of the fairly new ones from one of the EPs. And then The Only Way Out is Through, off of the right side of the Fragile. So we'll put links to those songs and all of our songs that we talk about in the description.
And for those of you playing at home, that's 3 more shots.
You're feeling good right now.
This show's getting great.
All right, Stevie, tell us what Rush songs you're listening to.
I have not listened to Rush at all this week. How about that? No, well, we spent most of the week listening to M, trying to get that in for the show. And then, as I told you earlier, working on a paper, I was listening to this up-and-coming artist named JPP, Justplainpaul.
Shucks.
Great album you can find on iTunes, Data of the East Accolade. I listened to it while I was writing tonight, and it is a solid record. So I would recommend anybody listening to go to iTunes and check that out. Justplainpaul.
Yeah, and I think, Paul, it's on Spotify, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Music, and iTunes now. So you can find it virtually anywhere where fine music is streamed.
Okay. I know that we're doing this podcast with Paul, but Paul knows this for the longest time. I've loved that album. Invaders is one of my favorite tracks off the album. So, anyway, yeah, anybody listening, I think you should give that album a shot for sure.
Cool. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And definitely shout out to the guys that put the verses on Invaders as well. They're all very talented people from the Indianapolis area and still doing their art and craft to this day. So I have a lot of respect for all of them that were involved.
That's cool.
Awesome. So, fellas, where can we find you on social media, Paul?
If you just type Justplainpaul, all one word, you'll find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if you want to get my Facebook music page, it's JPP Invasion.
JPP. Tony?
I am on MySpace.
He's got a dope page.
Yeah, no, like I said last week, and I took a few steps this week in doing it. I'm setting up some social media and different things for Wanderings and Wool Gathering, so I'll be behind that soon.
Excellent. And you can find me, Foggy's Pal, at Twitter and Instagram. And you can also find me writing over at breakthefourth.com. Next week, we promise we will have some info on Aphex Twin, some thoughts about the new record, and we will answer Tony's challenge of our favorite cover song, and we'll pick one that we think should be covered and by whom. And then Paul will issue the new challenge. Last thoughts, fellas, before we head out?
No, just looking forward to doing it again next week.
Yep, same here. That's been a lot of fun, and I hope you guys out there are enjoying it as well. It's fun to talk music, and feel free to chime in. We definitely want to hear from you and what excites your eardrums.
Definitely. Take the challenge yourself, so post it in the comments.
Awesome. Thank you so much, folks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.